On that note, we now turn to our underreported story. Yesterday, we discussed federal and state governments investing in Chinese companies with direct ties to the ironically named People's Liberation Army. For example, California's state employee retirement system, known as CalPERS, has close to $500 million tied up in such outfits. Never mind the threats to Taiwan and the Uyghur genocide China is currently perpetrating. Those are some eggs that CalPERS is willing to crack to make its retirement fund omelet. Yet last September, CalPERS boasted it was set to lead a global push for environmental, social, and corporate governance reporting, ESG for short, by companies in which the state invests. The retirement fund compiles data on the racial composition of corporate boards, greenhouse gas emissions, renewable energy, and other metrics of the companies in their portfolios. Basically, California tracks the wokeness of the companies it invests in, and blind hatred of all fossil fuels is one of the core woke beliefs. In coal and natural gas producing West Virginia, though, they're going in the opposite direction. The Mountain State has served notice to 6 major investment corporations that they have fewer than 30 days to show they are not boycotting fossil fuel industries. Otherwise, West Virginia will no longer invest taxpayer funds with them. So joining us now to discuss is West Virginia's State Treasurer, Riley Moore. Thanks for being here tonight, Riley.
Karen, thank you so much for having me.
Great. So last time we spoke, this bill you put forward had just passed the state legislature. Now it seems like it's going into effect here. So what are some of the financial institutions that you've put on notice with this letter? I think BlackRock and JP Chase might be on that list.
Yes, well, as reported, they are on the list. So BlackRock, JP Chase, as some publications had picked up on as we were FOIA'd over this. JP Chase, BlackRock, US Bank, Wells Fargo, as well as Morgan Stanley are on that list, just to name a few.
And as part of the idea here is to kind of put these Wall Street big firms on notice saying, you know, you can't exactly dump all your money. You can't go into West Virginia local politics and basically mess things up for the people who are actually living here, or living there, I should say.
Yeah, that's right. Look, I mean, we have a clear conflict of interest here. We're not going to hand over our dollars and have these financial institutions, these big banks, try to destroy our industries with the dollars at which they are handling. So there's a clear conflict of interest there. Look, West Virginia is an energy state. We're the 5th largest energy producer in the United States. And what we produce is what the country needs, which is baseload energy. Baseload energy is coal, natural gas, and then nuclear as well. And this is why we're seeing energy costs go up. We're also an oil producer. That's why you're seeing the cost of gas rise at the price, because these woke corporations have created a bubble as they've diverted capital away from investment in companies like this. This is why we see energy costs going up. This is why we see food prices going up, because food is moved on trucks. It all trickles down, unfortunately, to the American people, which are paying the price for this wild and totally out there woke political agenda, and we're going to continue to fight against it.
And I love everything that you're doing. I know the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, he's, been very vocal about how he likes to use kind of his weight around the world to kind of dictate the terms of policies and how people think and behave and, work together in societies. It's very creepy. So I'm glad that you're really trying to nip this in the bud in your state, but I'm sure it can't be easy. Kind of like a David versus Goliath type situation going on here. So I believe the letters went out on Friday of last week, June 10th. Have you heard back on any of them so far, and do you expect any kind of pushback, I guess, from some of these companies?
Yes, well, and I would point out David did win. So I would like to point that out in terms of David versus Goliath. But I have heard from some financial institutions. I did have someone from JP Chase reach out today, so we may be speaking with them. I think we are going to get responses. They do have 30 days to appeal this decision. And we'll see what they come up with in terms of information. And yes, look, I mean, this is not necessarily a popular position, but I'm not doing this to be popular. I'm doing this because I'm trying to protect our jobs, our energy security here in West Virginia in the United States.
And you were mentioning earlier about inflation, the energy crisis, most of it, of course, government made with the current administration in office right now, but also a lot of these woke corporations, as we're discussing here tonight. So how much of an impact do you think that this policy that you're putting into place will have, especially for West Virginia, but for the rest of the nation as well?
Well, look, this is a national movement. And as I said on your program previously, we are leading a coalition of 15 other states that are looking to form their banking contracts as well. And the legislation that we passed here in West Virginia, there's been a bill passed in Texas, recently passed in Oklahoma, and also Kentucky. And now we just heard yesterday that Tennessee is passed the same legislation as well. There were 13 states that introduced this type of legislation throughout the country in the last session. Now, a lot of these big banks were able to come in and crush that legislation, but I can promise you, this is going to come up again in the next legislative sessions throughout the country when we get into next year. And this is a movement that is happening in this country to push back against woke capitalism and this ESG investing, as they call it, to me, which the end of the day is this is coercive capitalism and it's economic extortion. And we're not going to stand for it as we're all sitting here paying higher food prices, higher gas prices, all at the behest of our absentee president, Joe Biden.
And of course, we've seen these last couple of years, especially the Republican Party as a whole has kind of been starting to angle itself as the party of the working class after so many years as being tarred and feathered as the party of only, the rich and the wealthy elites. Of course, Democrats have really taken on that latter mantle, as we've seen with the West Coast phenomenons, the blue state elites. But it was interesting, as you pointed out with Kentucky, I believe it was actually a Democrat governor who oversaw that similar law that was being the bill, I should say, that was signed into law there. Do you think that kind of shows that this can be a Republican and Democrat effort to maybe, go after some of those Democrats saying, remember your working class roots?
Oh, absolutely. Look, there in West Virginia, the legislation passed bipartisanly in the House and Senate. It was supported by Democrats and Republicans. I will point out it was also opposed by Democrats and Republicans, but passed overwhelmingly in the House and the Senate. Look, there are people on both sides of the aisle that understand how dangerous this is and detrimental to the United States, to the American people, and to the consumers here in our country. And look, this is the party of the working class. Myself, I started my career off as a welder working in a mining operation and then went on to go do other things in my career. I understand these people out here that are struggling very well. I understand the blue-collar worker, having been one myself. And look, these are great careers. We want to build more pipelines. We want to see more welders out there building pipelines. And look, you can make a heck of a lot more money doing that than going and getting a degree in, say, Russian literature. And I will tell you today, if I'd stayed a welder, I'd be making more money than I am right now as the state treasurer of West Virginia. But in any event, look, I'm proud to be here to be able to push back on this. And you mentioned BlackRock. What I will say about BlackRock here in West Virginia, the only kind of BlackRock that we like in West Virginia is beautiful, clean coal.
Oh, I absolutely love that. That's a perfect note to end on here. Usually there's so much bad news out there, so much bad news in the world, but I'm glad to have you on once again with at least positive and good updates. So like I said earlier, love what you're doing in the state. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Kara, thank you so much. God bless.